Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Lendy Ruano, and I am with Easter Seals of Southern California and the Disability Tribe Initiative. Today's live webinar, Alternative Services and Beyond Home and Community-Based Services Setting Rule, will be offering Spanish and ASL interpretation. Next slide. Para las personas que necesiten o prefieran el español, usted puede acceder a este servicio haciendo clic en el icono blanco en la parte de abajo que dice Interpretation. Después haga clic en Spanish y aquí tendrá la opción de silenciar el audio original y podrá escuchar la voz de Rubén Díaz traduciendo. En el canal español, si selecciona Mute Original Audio, nada más escuchará al intérprete. Si no hace clic en Mute Original Audio, entonces escuchará a los presentadores de habla inglés al fondo. Our ASL interpreters are Kimberly and Lori. They have been spotlighted so they can always be seen throughout the presentation. Depending on your device, this may mean that sometimes you cannot see the presenters. We apologize for the inconvenience, but we want to make sure that this meeting and recording can be accessible for everyone. This presentation will have closed captioning, which you can access using the button at the bottom of the screen. Next slide, please. A few things to note about Zoom before we get started. This meeting is being recorded to allow us to refer back to the discussion today and the input we may receive. You can hear and see us, but we cannot hear and see you. Everyone has been automatically put on mute and your camera is not on. Chat is not activated for attendees. However, presenters will be sharing some information through the chat during the webinar. If you would like to ask questions or provide a comment, please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. We also ask that you indicate which presenter you would like to send the question to. We have staff monitoring and responding as necessary. Some questions will be answered in real time. Some will be saved for the live Q&A at the end. Or we may ask you for your email address to follow up with a more thorough answer after the webinar. Si les gustaría hacer una pregunta en español, por favor utilice la función de Q y A y habrán personas en español que hablan español contestando sus preguntas. Gracias. For those of you on a phone or a device, you may not be able to use all of the features we discussed. We will be providing other options for you to access material or ask questions later in the webinar. Finally, at the end of today's webinar, we will be asking you to participate in our post-event survey. Once the webinar is over, a new window will pop open with a survey. Please provide your feedback so we can improve on future events. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce Executive Director at California Disability Services Association, Barry Giardini. Barry?
Thank you so much, Lendy. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our October installment of the Disability Thrive Initiative webinar training series. I'm very excited to have you all here for a great presentation on the Home and Community-Based Services Settings Rule. We're focusing on the development and transition and evolution of services through the Disability Thrive Initiative. And there are a lot of overlaps and similarities between alternative services and the underpinnings and the core concepts of the Home and Community-Based Services rule. So today's presentation will focus on some of those core principles that span across both of those programs. And we're hoping that you will learn more about some person-centered services, individualization, flexibility, and choice that underlie both of those presentations. Today we are, go to the next slide, please. We will be focusing on first demystifying the settings rule. We will talk about person-centered plans and a person-centered platform, individual choices, defining success, as well as providing some tips and resources to you as you're developing services and trying to adapt to the ever-changing world that we're all living in. So very excited about the panelists and presenters that we will have today to share their expertise and knowledge. And with that, I will kick it over to our first presenter. Next slide, please. We are joined today and grateful to have her, Diva Johnson, the Director of Community Development from Tri-County Regional Center, will be presenting on demystifying the settings rule. Diva, thank you so much for being here. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And I hope that I do this group justice in the demystifying of the HCBS settings rule. I am from Tri-Counties Regional Center, and we have had over the past 15 years the pleasure of being neck deep in person-centered thinking. So I want to start by giving you guys just a little bit of history before we get into the HCBS final rule. So everything that I'm going to share with you today is from our website. So the first thing I wanted to present to you was person-centered thinking. And for us, this journey started a little over 15 years ago. There was a very concerted effort to build capacity in our community for person-centered thinking. We partnered with our provider community to develop certified PCT trainers and mentors. And the reason that we partnered is because we wanted to build sustainability. I know that just with regards to the HCBS funding opportunities that people have taken advantage of, often I've seen some agencies who are attempting to build capacity around person-centered thinking on their own, try to get some certified trainers and mentors. But I really highly encourage folks, and if you get nothing else from my entire presentation, it really is about community collaborations. Because if you're an agency and you have one certified person-centered thinking trainer and that person wins the lottery, you have to start all over again. But if you partner in your community with other providers or regional center, you end up with a wonderful network of trainers and mentors that really, again, add not only to the sustainability of person-centered practices, but also to the collaboration and the partnerships that we have in moving forward and making sure that our communities continue to move forward. So for Tri-Counties, we use person-centered thinking approaches, not just for the individuals that we support, but in all the work that we do. So it really isn't uncommon for us to use person-centered thinking skills to shape our meetings, facilitate discussions, whether those meetings be internal or with other agencies, or even for personal or professional development. And again, this information is on our website. There's a short video that talks about how we utilize person-centered practices across Tri-Counties, and this is my wonderful boss, Omar Nourzad. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and shift into the HCBS final rule. Now, back in 2015, when the HCBS final rule was announced, there was a lot of scurrying about. I don't know how many of you have had the pleasure of actually reading the HCBS final rule, but it is multiple pages and lots of really, really, really tiny words. It can be really overwhelming. And at first glance, I think folks had a lot of different interpretations of what the rules really focused on and what they meant. So in our community, we put together an HCBS task force, which was the regional center and our surrounding provider community. And we took the opportunity to share information from our different stakeholder groups to really kind of, again, demystify what the intent was of the HCBS final rule and how that was going to impact service provision and the lives of the individuals who are receiving services. What we were clear on, as you can see, this is just an example of a flyer that we used for our ongoing meetings, is that we really got to the place of understanding that the point of the HCBS final rule was to promote autonomy and choice using person-centered planning, to promote community integration, and to promote options for employment. So once we got to that place, it wasn't so scary, but I also have to say that having a visual as opposed to just a lot of words to navigate, also kind of drove that point home for us. And this publication called The Riot, which was published by Human Services Research Institute, was unfortunately past tense. Last year in 2020, they did their last issues, but this is an online magazine and the archives are available that is published by individuals who receive services. So this is completely advocate driven. And I really found this visual to be helpful. I'm going to make this a little larger. And that is, if you check this out, when Mindy found out about the new federal regulation, she showed her home provider that she had a few changes of her own to make. So that top picture really kind of displays someone living in a residential home receiving support, whereas the second picture, at least to me, shows a picture of somebody in their own space receiving support. And it's the same building, it's the same services, but the picture on the bottom really does show and demonstrate how person-centered practices can really integrate person's choice and what their desires are and help us deliver services in a way that's meaningful to them. I often tell people that person-centered thinking approaches is really not about the what, it's about the how. So when you marry the HCBS final rule to person-centered thinking approaches, the HCBS final rule is the what, person-centered thinking practices is the how. Because in theory, this top picture, they're meeting licensing standards. This one, they're encouraging quality of life. So with that, oh, sorry, I jumped ahead. Actually, I'm gonna stay here. So our group with the HCBS Final Rule Task Force, we started thinking about, as we were having these conversations, repeatedly, one of the themes that emerged was, well, what about those providers and individuals that are not at the table? What about the people who are not benefiting from these rich conversations? Maybe they're geographically challenged. Maybe they just don't have the time. How do we reach them in our community and make sure that they have the same information that we do to go forward and make sure that they're providing services in a person-centered way? So after a lot of discussion and thought, some creativity was sparked, and we thought about the opportunities presented by the HCBS funding proposals, or funding grant opportunities. Now, at that time, I do not believe that there were any joint proposals that had been submitted. So typically, agencies were submitting proposals just solely on their own. And certainly at that time, because the focus was on providers becoming in compliance, there was also very little regional center involvement in any projects that were being funded. So as we were thinking about how to do outreach to individuals and service providers who may not have ready access to this really critical information, we decided to develop what was called the Peer Partner Project. Now, the Peer Partner Project specifically was designed to target providers who were in outlying geographic areas or who were small agencies who were unable to join these types of meetings. And what was also unique about this project is that instead of just focusing on providing the providers, our vendor community, with training and tools, we actually wanted to complement that by making sure that we were also supporting and educating individuals who are receiving support so that there was parity in the learning, parity in the expectations, and so that there was a natural sense of accountability, if you will. The peers who were selected for this project were from the provider community. So we matched providers with providers. And then we also recruited individuals receiving supports and or their family members to be paired up with individuals who were receiving services from the providers who were going to be part of this project. The only requirements that we had of our peer partners was that they had participated in and completed the introduction to person-centered thinking training. And then as part of the peer partner project, they received training in the HCBS final rule. Again, it was really important for us that the provider and the individuals were receiving the same information at the same time. For this particular project, we did target residential settings. As an outcome of that project, we ended up with this wonderful workbook or training guide called Living Well in My Community. And again, this is available on our website. And this is really where the fun begins, because this is the heart of the information that I want to share with you guys today. So Living Well in Our Community, a guide to home and community-based services and person-centered practices, is on our website. It is downloadable. It is available in English, Spanish, and Tagalog. So I'm going to start with the English version. So as you can see, it is 120 pages. I am not going to scroll through page by page today. I just want to really hit the highlights of this manual. Important things to know that it is available to anybody to download. It is not the intent that someone would go through all 120 pages. We put it together in sections so that people could actually just go in and pick those parts which mean the most to them, that might be useful, and then they can pull those parts out. So it's not, we don't want folks to be overwhelmed by the volume of this information, but rather think, oh my God, I have a complete resource set that I can utilize and select what materials at this time would be helpful or meaningful to me. This guide was also deliberately designed to have both the audience of providers and individual receiving services. So as this workbook is navigated, it speaks to both, which I think is very, again, important that we have parity in understanding, parity in expectations, and again, with the hope of maintaining accountability in our system so that we are constantly striving to help support individuals live the lives that they want to live. So I did want to share with you page 6. This is in the beginning section of the manual. It does go over and explain what the HCBS final rule requirements are, such as being a part of the community, choosing where someone lives, having dignity and respect. It gives examples of what those things mean in addition to a definition. The most pertinent part of this manual that I would like to briefly go over with you today is actually in section 3. So this is the Living Well in My Community, part 3, characteristics of quality of home and community-based services. What is pertinent about this section is that part 3 does another review of all of the HCBS requirements, but under each requirement, it also offers up person-centered skills and tools which align with those requirements to help individuals and providers jointly utilize these tools to make sure that compliance occurs. Now, what we discovered through our rich conversations in our task force, through this project, and also through this workbook, is that if people are really committed to person-centered approaches and are using the skills, they overlay the HCBS final rule so nicely that if you're doing this work really well, compliance is not going to be your concern. You will actually be able to see how creativity has helped you meet compliance, as opposed to just staring at regulations, trying to figure out how to make heads or tails of them and focusing on the regs instead of focusing on the person. So again, the HCBS final rule is the what, the person-centered thinking skills is the how. And it really does lend itself to a much richer compliance, if you will, to the HCBS final rule. It's more than just compliance, it's quality of life. And it exemplifies personal choice. So this is just an example of what I just described to you. So being a part of the community is one of the requirements. here, this is nicely defined in terms of what that HCBS final requirement means. And then there's examples. So for example, being a part of the community could mean finding competitive employment among other individuals without disabilities or participating in local activities. What's nice about how the section of this workbook is set up is that it also gives you an opportunity to kind of do a self-assessment to see how you're doing. Do you have opportunities to go places in your community, like stores, restaurants, places to worship? So after you finish this, it kind of gives you an idea of where you are so that the provider and the individual receiving supports can kind of partner around. If there are areas where the answer was no, then those need to be some obvious place of focus. And if they're not sure how to address those areas, then they can start moving into the person-centered thinking tools that might help them get there. So some of the tools that are listed here are gifts and capacities, who I am, community mapping, presence and contribution, what happens here, important to and important for. This is a tool that a lot of people are familiar with. Matching routines and rituals, good day, bad day, as well as working, not working, decision-making profile, and decision-making agreements. The following pages of this section really break down each one of these skills and tools. It explains what their purpose is, how they work, and how to use them. So if someone chooses to use any one of these and following the directions that are made available in this workbook, by the time they're done, they should be able to creatively and meaningfully turn any of these no's into a yes. So this is how the workbook is laid out. This is how it's presented for every HCBS final rule requirement. And this is why the workbook is 120 pages. So with that, I am available for any Q&A that you might have, so please use that if you have questions about this workbook. Again, it is available on the Tri-Counties Regional Center website for free. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Diva, for that nice overview of the HCBS rule, but also the tip to use that resource to really dig in a little bit deeper and get a better understanding of what this might look like, and really a tool to help people go through it themselves to figure out how they can make this work. So thank you for that. We will move now to our next presenters, and it is my pleasure to introduce Jamie Markey and Michael Pereira, who will be presenting on a person-centered platform, another joint project that came together through the HCBS funding grants. And so we are proud to welcome Jamie Markey again, the Director of Community Development from Mansell, California, and Michael Pereira, the Executive Director from Alacosta Centers. Thank you for being here today.
Thanks so much, Barry. And thanks for everybody for being on the call. First, I want to give a shout out to Diva and thank her for kind of introducing and kind of setting the stage for Jamie and I to kind of talk a little bit about the application of HCBS, or Home and Community-Based Services. As Barry mentioned, my name is Mike Pereira. I am the Executive Director of a service provider in Berkeley that provides after-school services and adult day services. Jamie?
Yes, my name is Jamie Markey, and again, I'm the Director of Community Development at Mansell Services, and my primary role is doing internal and external consulting around person-centered practices and really how to sustain it, embed it, and for all people to have a voice. So thank you for having us, everyone.
Next slide, please. So Jamie and I are going to kind of tag team this for folks and kind of give a brief overview of the project that we've been working on in a collaborative effort with a lot of different stakeholder groups over the last several years. What we're calling it is the Joint Provider Home and Community-Based Services Funding / Mansell. It's what we've attempted to do is create a person-centered platform for participants to engage in the person-centered planning process in an active way. Next slide, please. So, how did this come about? Really what it came about was, as I'm sure that the department will note later about the availability of home and community-based services funding, this program or this capacity has been around for a couple of years, and we had some providers who had access to HCBS funding prior to our project. And so they had some experience and exposure with transitioning their programs into meeting the final rule, as Diva was mentioning. But in the fall of 2019, a group of us got together and really started to think about what were the relevant needs for our community that were harder to kind of get at. And what we recognized was that there were a large percentage of folks that, because of their support needs or because of communication-based barriers they'd have, weren't going to necessarily have as much access to person-centered planning, thinking, and those types of tools. So it kind of spawned from that original idea, and a group of providers in the East Bay kind of collectively got around this notion about these higher support need folks, or these people with communication challenges, and thought, well, how are we going to be able to address that if we're really going to move towards a system that is truly person-centered? So what we basically wanted to do is to acknowledge that, one, there was a potential for making this more common, and that there were kind of more universal access issues that are out there, and not just for all of our learners and diverse needs, but also those that have that are monolingual or speak only English. So what we did is we went to the Regional Center of the East Bay, which is our catchment area, and went to their HCBS team and kind of outlined our approach. And at the time, at least what was referred to us, this was an unprecedented kind of attempt to have a bunch of people kind of collaborate on a project. Next slide, please. So essentially what we were able to do is talk with the regional center, and the regional center spoke with Department of Developmental Services for us to kind of craft this proposal underneath the HCBS funding. And so I just wanted to acknowledge those groups that were part of that collaboration initially, and I'll be slow for the interpreter. Ability Now Bay Area, Alacosta Centers, the California Autism Foundation, Futures Explored, Harambee Community Services, Las Trampas, and Mainsail, where Jamie works for. Next slide, please. So this has been something that's evolved over some time. So initially, as I mentioned, really we were looking for kind of an entryway for those with higher support needs or communication barriers to access person-centered services or person-centered thinking and principles. What we kind of came to the conclusion was with that providing like a resource or some sort of kind of hub for that information was valuable, but really what we wanted to do was to create a way for people to engage and make active choices about who would be participants in their planning and who would be participants in their lives using, again, the principles that were there. A lot of our providers had been fortunate enough to gone through person-centered thinking and planning trainings. So we had a really good idea about what the fundamental needs were for people who would like to find a way to develop their own plans. So what led us to Mainsail was basically a trial and error period with a variety of web developers, web designers, and as I'm sure people can appreciate on this call, that's not our area of expertise. And what we found was that a disconnect between kind of what our vision was for what this could be and how it would be executed in an online space. And a group of us had been fortunate enough to be trained by by Jamie and her team at Mainsail for person-centered practices. And when we reached out to Mainsail regarding them being a subject matter expert in this project, we discovered that they had an IT department that worked on these types of things. And that was a very, the term we've used is serendipitous. You know, the stars aligned very nicely for us to then partner with Mainsail and really kind of move through and usher into this really exciting project that Jamie's going to present to you now.
Okay.
Next slide, please.
Thank you, Mike. Yes, so as Mike expressed, this collaborative, as Diva was also speaking to, came together and really identified an unmet need, and to create a platform where the person themselves has complete control and their voices are absolutely heard. So within that first HCBS grant funding, we were able to create a platform that gives the person themselves the ability to create their own person-centered plan remotely and connect it to the people that they love across the US. And we'll talk more about where we currently are in that development. With all the excitement and realizing that development is actually quite expensive and there's a lot to be done, because we want to be able to, again, adapt the platform so it is accessible to all. So we applied, actually Mainsail did, with the Far Northern Regional Center for more funding for a second year of development and outreach. Our goal is to get this into the hands of anyone that wants it or that can use it. So we completed our first funding cycle, and now we are entering into our second. And again, the hope is that this continues to evolve. It's a living, breathing site where people have access, resources, and control. Next slide, please. So where we are currently is we have purchased, we went back and forth for quite a while of what does the domain look like, what's going to connect to people. We have the site, it is active for the provider organizations within this grant. We have gone through sandbox testing, which what we did is we gathered subject matter experts, not only from the providers that received the funding, but also from person-centered planners, from self-advocates, language experts, employment. So we gathered a bunch of experts together to say, how can we create this in plain, simple language so it is easy and accessible for all? Once we completed our initial round, we did sandbox testing. So the providers and the subject matter experts were able to get onto the site, give us feedback, tell us what was working, what was not working, where are the areas of improvement. We went back as a development team, made all those adaptations because we found a lot. And then we actually, again, wanted to get it into the hands of end users, or what we call beta testers, which are the people that will be using the site once it is officially launched. From the beta testing, we were able to gain so much insight, not only on what can be changed, how can this be easier to access, to maneuver, but also the impact that this site can have. Again, we use people that, we partnered with people that receive services to say, what are the needs? What do you want to see in this site? And it has been a very powerful transition, and it's evolving. We're currently, the current status is this will be tablet and mobile responsive. So we are in beta testing for the tablet and mobile responsive, where end users are giving us feedback on how accessible is this if I'm using a 5-inch Samsung phone? Am I able to create a plan and access the platform using that? Again, we wish we could say here and say it's accessible. I was available for all. Right now, it is still within the provider group. So that way we can continue to enhance it and work out the bugs that we are finding. So next slide. Our hope not only is for every person within the providers that receive the funding to be able to utilize to create their plan, but we want this to be accessible to all people. That is our goal. That's our vision, because we want it to make an impact and we believe in what we are creating. We're still working on what that would look like. Mike, do you want to speak to that at all? I want to make sure I'm not.
Yeah, thanks, Jamie. I think the key part, and this will go kind of flow into the next slide, which is our vision for things as well, is really person-centered planning, person-centered thinking is fundamental to service delivery and for people with disabilities. Our system is moving in that direction really well and really rapidly. But what we want to be able to do is provide a tool that can have universal access for as many folks that want to utilize it, so that they, can find the best means for their people in their lives, or the participants themselves, to make active choices in their lives.
Yep.
And we're hopeful that this online platform, this presence, when it's fully developed, can do that. And Jamie kind of mentioned a little bit, and for some of you may have some questions. Essentially, we're hoping that this will be a means for any participant to actively choose who is going to be in their circle of support, make those decisions, and have those people contribute in an online fashion to be able to shape a person-centered plan based upon many of the principles that Diva had mentioned that are outlined in the PCRC kind of guide that's there. The dream of this is basically to have participants have tremendous agency in how they want to live their lives, and have a medium that can be used by as many people as possible for that purpose. And so really it's an idea is to be able to be as far-reaching and universal as we can to promote these ideals of person-centeredness and make sure that that is at the heart of what somebody wants for their life, and then ultimately for us as service providers to know how best to support that person in their wishes and dreams, or for that of families to be partners in that process and participants in that, in the full experience of what that could be. And the implications of this could be very far-reaching and not just impact people on the ground, but as we look at how our system needs to evolve itself to really give an opportunity for everybody to participate in a process that is meaningful for the person being served. And that's really what's most critical to all this. Next slide, please. So again, our goal is to provide a low cost or free for the user participant, a resource to promote person-centered practices and plans. And part of that process is for us to seek, our goal is, again, and this is probably our sales pitch to DDS who's on the call, is to seek statewide standardization from all regional centers. One of the things that we're finding now during this person-centered environment is that the facilitation of that can be costly. And so one of the ways to help mitigate some of that cost is to look at this as a tool to do that well. And certainly people need to be trained and people need to know exactly what that is. Part of what this platform will also provide is resources for folks to get that information readily. And then again, provide that in a very direct way for those who are actively participating in the process, most likely the people being served. And finally, our vision for this is to be able to make this accessible to participants of all backgrounds and ethnicities, including the deaf and hard of hearing community, including all ethnicities underneath the sun. Person-centered practices is a philosophic intent, not something that is specific to any one person or one group. Jamie, did you want to comment on anything?
No, I think that's perfect. As of right now, it's currently being translated into 10 languages. We're looking at getting ASL translation into our videos. The site is also intended not only to give people to have the opportunity to have your voice be heard, but also a highly engaging and visual and interactive site that people look forward to when creating their plan. And it's going to be a fun, engaging process. And we want it to, again, be accessible for all people. So we are quite excited about it and the potential and the feedback that we are hearing thus far, because we think it can do a lot of good. So thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Jamie, and thank you to everybody for your attention. We're really excited about this project, and although it's not ready for public consumption yet, we're hopeful that it will be relatively soon, and we'll certainly be reaching out to a variety of areas so we can make that known. Thanks very much.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Jamie and Mike. A really exciting project, and really excited about the prospects for what it could mean for access and just a furtherance of the concept of person-centeredness for both HCBS and really, as you mentioned, Mike, our transition of services going forward. So thank you for that. We are now going to move to our next presentation, focusing on individual choice and how that defines success, another HCBS grant funding project from Parents and Friends. And I am pleased to introduce Christy Tangway from Parents and Friends to introduce the project before we start the video. Thanks, Christy.
Thank you, Barry. Hi, everyone. I'm Christy with Parents and Friends. What good company to be in to hear about all of these innovations and collaborations that are available to all of us. Today, we made an adaptation to our presentation, and it's a pre-recorded presentation. We'll be here in the Q&A today and also on Friday in the Lunch and Learn. But you'll be hearing from our leaders and our participants about how individual choice defines success. Thank you. Hello from Parents and Friends Incorporated. We're pleased to share with you how individual choice defines success. The mission of Parents and Friends is to help people with developmental challenges or similar needs to participate fully in our community. Hi, my name is Christy Tangway, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer with Parents and Friends. PFI provides residential, community integration, and decision planning services for more than 110 unique participants on the beautiful rural and remote Mendocino coast. With support from the Redwood Coast Regional Center, our team is happy to be with you today to share some of our successes arising from DDS funding to support home and community-based services final rule objectives. Today, you'll be hearing from Xaviera Hall, who is our Program Director for Community Integration Services. Xavi is also a certified person-centered thinking trainer, a licensed program administrator, and a customized employment specialist. Xavi also led many of PFI's COVID-19 safety program developments. You'll also meet Roshan Ashford, our Program Coordinator for Person-Centered Services. Roshan is also a certified person-centered thinking trainer, a customized employment specialist, and she coordinates PFI's Participant Council. Terilyn Epperson is our Alternative Services Program Manager. She is also a customized employment specialist, and she oversees PFI's technology services. I'm pleased that you'll also meet Cody Hawk, who, through Discovery, has made significant progress on his employment aspirations over the past several years. We'll also hear from Buddy Peterson, who through Alternative Services is able to stay safe and make some exciting changes to his goals. In 2018, PFI applied for and received some important HCBS funding to help us support 3 specific federal requirements. The first being to increase engagement in competitive integrated employment. The second, to increase individual discovery and job carving activities. And the 5th requirement, to increase an individual's ability to choose which staff they are matched with to provide their care and support. Our objectives boil down to helping people to discover the answers to these questions. Can I work? Where can I work? Who do I want to help me best discover who I am and what I want? And who do I want to support me to work on my goals? In our proposal, we plan to develop a person-centered thinking training program and a job developer employment specialist program. I'd like to welcome Xavi to tell you about some of the steps we've taken as an organization.
Thank you, Christy. Before HCBS final rule activity, we believed we were promoting individual choice through daily life decisions. But if we were, why do these questions remain for some people? We have to realize that choice looks different for each individual. A commitment to change. Is it our employees? Is it the people we serve? Together, how can we do better? We asked our participants. First, we explained to our participants what we were wanting to learn and why it was important. We met face-to-face, talked on the phone, sent written surveys home, adapted to electronic format, conducted panel interviews. Everything was participant-driven. We asked these questions. What type of learner are you? What do you need from a trainer? Who would you choose to provide this training? It was through these exchanges we learned what sorts of questions needed to be asked, and we kept asking them. We continue to use these questions that were developed in employee interviews to this day. Why person-centered services? Parents and Friends believes that person-centered thinking provides the best approach and skills to learn about people, what they want from life, setting and implementing goals, creating individual plans, informed decision-making, and treating others with dignity and respect. First, we will talk about person-centered thinking. We developed and maintained 2 certified person-centered thinking trainers on staff. We provided training to PFI community integration staff, program participants, and community members to promote the culture of person-centered thinking. We provided training to PFI community. In doing so, we developed person-centered plans. And now I'm turning it over to Tara Lynn.
Thank you, Xavi. The employment database was developed to centralize local employers, contacts, competitive integrative employment opportunities, and progress. We documented insights into the unique needs of each business, capturing more than 170 unique businesses, contacts, and opportunities. The Job Club is a facilitator-led employment discovery training in accordance with in-house Association of Community Rehabilitation Educators standards. To further support individual needs and desires, the Job Club was enhanced to be offered in a self-paced, interactive format to provide flexibility in assessing the training. Through alternative services, this curriculum was also made available virtually to meet participants and their circle of support members where they are, using Amazon Fire tablets that were provided by the Redwood Coast Regional Center, along with Wi-Fi hotspots and technical skills training provided by Parents and Friends. I would like to introduce you to Cody. At the beginning of his employment career, Cody had a job at the local community television station. He created flash animation for the station's weather program, emphasizing his hard skill technical skill set. However, there was an identified need for soft skills development. Enter the Job Club, a facilitator-led training program with an emphasis on the soft skills needed to meet an employer's expectations and the individual's goals in order to secure competitive integrative employment. At the Job Club, Cody explored the concepts of the A game, which are appreciation, acceptance, accountability, attendance, appearance, ambition, and attitude. Working with a group of his peers, Cody learned teamwork, communication, and supervisor-employee relations. Let's hear from Cody now.
My name is Cody Hawk. The A-game skills I learned during Job Club are that I'm ambitious, always ready for work and to do my best. I have a good attitude, and that I have good appearance. Well, my ambition, that helped me because you ask me to do something, I am willing to do it, no matter what it is. For acceptance, since Job Club, I've kind of tried to be a bit more patient with people. Parents and Friends has helped me out because it's helped me find good work. It's helped me hang with good friends. Yeah, I enjoy working. It keeps me out of the house, and I like the fact that I get something out of it, and it gives me something to do during the day. And also getting money so that I can help Mom pay the bills around the house.
Thank you, Cody. Soon after the Job Club, Cody was awarded Employee of the Quarter at his job, as well as securing additional competitive integrative employment with new community partners for a total of not 1, not 2, but 3 jobs. Learning the Job Club's fundamentals concepts assisted Cody with bringing his A game to any job he pursued.
Thank you, Tara Lynn, and thank you, Cody. PFI maintains its ongoing commitment to employment services. In 2019, we applied for and received additional funding to increase these opportunities for employment through customized employment. Our partners at Griffin Hammes and Associates are imparting the skills needed to find what's inside of people. That is, how to discover the inner genius within each of us. We have found that engaging in customized employment feels a lot like wearing new glasses to identify opportunities where they weren't readily visible. We're continuing the ongoing development of our employment database, and we're also developing a new customized employment service. This will facilitate braided funding to support individual participant goals. We are also committed to sustaining our person-centered thinking culture within the organization. With our 2 certified person-centered thinking trainers, we're now offering this training to all of our employees and participants across the organization. Recently, person-centered thinking training has been enhanced for virtual delivery in a variety of scheduling configurations in order to maximize engagement. Last month, we delivered a mixed model of simultaneous virtual and in-person learning using a single instructor. We continue to try new things to ensure that the culture of person-centered thinking drives our planning and our actions. With that, we have a new program that now makes the service available to all Redwood Coast Regional Center participants. Let's hear from Rashawn, who will explain in more detail.
Thank you, Christy. Person-centered services, tools, discovery, and documentation. Inputs can be varied by individual preference. Customized assessments are based on individual needs and their preferences. Outputs can vary by individual needs, such as person-centered descriptions, one-page or one-page medical descriptions. These plans provide some advanced readiness to respond to pandemic planning with development of medical one-page descriptions. There are many possible individual needs, goals, and situations that benefit from person-centered planning. As an example, transitioning from student life to adult services. A person who is living independently and getting ready to leave student services, but they have yet to discover what happens next, who gets to decide, and why the rest to have a plan. Many people in overlapping circles are wanting to ensure the best outcomes. Oftentimes, this team of people involved are made up of people who have information to share and information to gain. By using person-centered services for discovery, we can address and learn different perspectives of who, what, when, where, why, and how. These roles, goals, and timelines are defined by the individual. So how does it happen? We don't call it a meeting. Workshops can take forms in many ways, such as phone calls, quizzes, going someplace, video chats, online surveys, and much more that you can think of. Timing is key. If 10 minutes is the preferred time to engage, then 10 minutes it is. Pay attention to cues learned in discovery to guide the ongoing process. Sometimes we overplan. It can feel like the plan failed. Then the magic happens naturally through individual choice. Back to you, Tara Lynn.
Thank you, Roshan. Through alternative services, the possibilities are wide open to meet an individual and their circle of support wherever they are in order to engage in the discovery process, create plans, take action, and make progress on individual goals. Alternative services are a person-centered adaptation that has endless outcomes. A person can change their plan, but not their goal. They may choose to try something new altogether, or both. I'd like to introduce you to Buddy. Buddy has had a column in the PFI newsletter. His column is called Buddy Asks. Buddy used to go out on location to interview PFI employees to learn more about them. After being on location, Buddy would return to the office to type up his interview and create graphics for the newsletter. Pictured here is Buddy on location at the PFI Learning Garden, and a copy of his last newsletter that was produced using the methods I just described. Now, we call that traditional. The column takes on a new medium. When the pandemic hit, it was important for Buddy to stay safe. He began engaging in services that were provided in the home and soon acquired technical skills through alternative services to operate his regional center provided Amazon Fire tablet, to send and receive emails, research topics, and participate in video interactions. Buddy immediately began conducting his interviews over the phone and emailed the transcribed interviews to the office for placement in the newsletter. It was nice, but through alternative services, Buddy created Buddy Peterson, The World According to. It's a Zoom show that invites guests to watch as Buddy conducts live interviews. Here's a clip.
I see you got a background on there, huh?
You like my home?
Well, it's kind of funny looking.
What do you mean?
I always do a laughing face smile at it. That's all. What is something about yourself that others might not know?
I can sing like Louis Armstrong. I want to hear her sound like Louis Armstrong. Me too. All right, let's hear you go. Raise your hand, my baby. Maybe my baby found somebody to. Thank you very much. Yay.
Really good.
Thank you very much.
Tiana, come on, let's just be serious here, my friend. My favorite food is, for spicy food, is jalapeno peppers.
Ooh, that's good. Oh.
I gotta say, Caroline, you are a nice, beautiful woman I never met my whole entire life.
Thank you so much.
Are you
Thank
welcome?
you. That is so very kind of you, buddy.
No, I gotta say, you do a really good job doing your job and stuff.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Yeah,
Bye.
thank you. Bye-bye.
Alternative services provided Buddy a platform to showcase his gift of banter, as well as connecting him with a live audience.
Thank you, Tara Lynn, and thank you, Buddy. As you've seen, the value of discovery and alternative services cannot be denied. We'd like to say thank you to the California Disability Services Association, the Department of Developmental Services, Easter Seals of Southern California, the Disability Thrive Initiative, the Redwood Coast Regional Center, and to each of you for sharing your time with us today. If I can leave you with one thought, it is this. Through discovery, we can find new ways to ask and then adapt. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much, Christy, and for the Parents and Friends team for that great video. I think Tara Lynn really summed it up really well in terms of how alternative services can blend with the concepts of the home and community-based services rule, and really how you're implementing that at your program is really exceptional. So thank you so much. And I look forward to meeting Buddy one day. He seems awesome. So we're going to move on to our next presenter, and we are delighted to be joined by a representative from the Department of Developmental Services to go over the HCBS settings rules, some tips, resources, some information on grant funding, and one of my favorite people at DDS, Susie Crow, the Chief of HCBS Regulations. Thank you for being here today. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Barry. That's very kind. Hi, everyone. I'm Susan Crow with the Department of Developmental Services. My team and I here at the department work towards the state's transition with the HCBS final rule, which you've heard a lot about here today. With me here from DDS is also Karina Cruz. We both really appreciate the conversation happening here and the work everyone has done to make this happen. The strong focus on person-centered planning is the intention of providing alternative services through this time, and is certainly the heart of the final rule. We love to see it. Okay, next slide. So some next steps here for us as a state. For the 6th year, the department has been fortunate to receive $15 million through the 2021 enacted budget to fund changes that are necessary for providers to come into compliance with the HCBS final rule. So this is funding that can go to providers to help them transition the way services are provided in order to be in alignment with the final rule. What we are looking for in a provider's concept or project is that the funding will go towards maximizing opportunities and choices for individuals, promoting community integration by making sure individuals have meaningful interactions within their communities, making sure individuals have the opportunity to work and spend time with other people in their community, ensuring individual preferences are supported and rights are protected, and establishing person-centered service planning, which includes a process driven and directed by the individual to identify needed services and supports. The biggest thing we look for with this funding is for creative ways providers are bringing the individuals they support to the forefront of their services and changing or adding to their program services, something that uniquely benefits those they support. What is needed to accomplish this can look different for each program, depending on the service type as well as the individuals served. As you've all heard here today and throughout other presentations through this initiative as well, there have been many different projects funded, but a common theme is individualizing services and prioritizing person-centered planning, with the end result being getting people served more involved in their services. So if a provider is wanting to apply for funding, they can find the concept application and process guidelines on the department website. And I think, thank you, Lauren, for putting that into the chat there. Providers will need to submit their concept to their regional center by November 10th. We really, really encourage you to work with your regional center prior to submitting your concept. Talk through the different ideas you have, talk through how something will get paid through the contract if this is the idea that you have. Work within those existing provider networks that I believe most of these projects actually touched on today. Work as a team, just as you will with the individuals that you serve in the creation of your concept. Regional centers will then submit all concepts to the department by December 10th. The department will conduct our review and post awarded or approved projects to the website in February of next year. You can again view the detailed guidelines of this resource on the department's website. We will also very soon be posting the recording of our webinar walkthrough from last week if you missed that. It's a detailed look into these guidelines and the funding process and gives some ideas for providers on what to submit. Next slide. Here we are going to talk about the steps we are taking and will take to ensure our state and services are in compliance with the final rule by the deadline of March 2023. In accordance with the statewide transition plan, which if that sounds new to you, it is the document each state must submit to the federal government, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, that outlines what the state will do to come into compliance with the final rule. So in accordance with the plan, the department first needed to evaluate current services to get a baseline level of compliance across California's service types. We did this through a provider self-assessment, and then to validate the accuracy of those self-assessments, we completed a statistically valid sample of the on-site assessments. These were done virtually to ensure the safety and well-being of everyone involved due to the COVID-19 pandemic, thus a virtual site assessment. The next steps will be for providers of home and community-based services to complete a plan for how they will come into compliance with the final rule. Additional training and information will be shared soon, very soon, about this process. Next slide. I'll go through these pretty quickly. I know we're running up against time. We have here some links to the DDS, HCBS web pages. Here up at the top, we have our main web page. There's a lot of great information here, including a link to the statewide transition plan, information about the assessment process that I reviewed in the last slide. We also have a link here to the FAQs, or frequently asked questions, posted to that page, as well as our HCBS regs email address with where you can email questions about funding or the HCBS final rule in general. That email is hcbsregs@dds.ca.gov. Next slide. A few additional links. We have posted a series of webinars on the topic of person-centered practices and planning. You can access that at the department's website here at that link. And of course, as mentioned before and sent into the chat, the link for the HCBS funding documents for this year, just below that at the bottom of the page. I'd like to note that on this HCBS compliance funding page, you can download the documents to fill out, which are listed separate from the PDF guidelines document, although also included on that page. And that's all I have for you guys today. Pass it back to Barry.
Thank you so much, Susie. Appreciate it. Appreciate the information. And we can go to the next slide, please. I'm just going to share a little bit more information about some additional resources to help with an understanding of the HCBS final rule. The first one is through the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network. It's a HCBS settings rule plain language toolkit, which can help people get through kind of the legal information in a much more reasonable way. The second resource listed there is the project that Diva shared, our first presenter, on the Living Well in My Community. Again, it is available in multiple languages, English, Spanish, Tagalog, and you can go there to get a lot of information about the HCBS final rule and how you can implement it in your programs and in your communities. Next slide, please. I want to invite you all who are attending today to join us to continue this conversation on Friday at our Lunch and Learn. We're going to have a number of the presenters there to talk and answer questions about their projects. It's certainly a much more interactive space where you can ask questions directly and we can get back to you. Susie and Karina from DDS will also be joining us as well to answer questions you might have about grant funding proposals, et cetera. So please do bookmark that. It's on Friday, October 15th from noon to 1. You can register at lunchandlearn.disabilitythriveinitiative.org. Of course, you can get to that link as well through our website, but hopefully you will come and continue this conversation, and we'll be able to answer some more questions there. Next slide, please. Additionally, the Disability Thrive Initiative continues to update our resources page and trying to get as much information out as we can. I think you will have seen today that a lot of those core themes, the person-centeredness, the individual choice, the centering of the individuals with a disability in both alternative services and in the home and community-based services settings rule are the same. And we focused on a lot of those core fundamentals throughout our project here and the initiative. So all of our backlog of resources, webinars, etc., are available on our resource library at disabilitythriveinitiative.org. You can also go there to sign up for email updates to find out the latest about our next webinars, support opportunities, lunch and learns, etc., so that we can support you through the alternative services program. Next slide, please. Just another reminder as well that we have the Disability Services Support Center that offers free one-on-one or group assistance with accessing and or delivering alternative services. So if you're struggling now, I mean, we're in October, but it's still time to make sure that we are meeting the needs of the individuals. And if your needs are not being met, or if you're a provider who needs new ideas to freshen up your offerings to make sure that you're truly meeting the needs of your clients, feel free to reach out to us. We have consultants available to help you brainstorm and really work on some of those best practices to meet the best meet the needs of our community. You can make a request for a consultation or for support at support.disabilitythriveinitiative.org. Next slide, please. And a quick reminder that we have a webinar next month that is a continuation in theme with this webinar. It's alternative services and beyond, but we'll be focusing instead on the self-determination program. So we're going to have presenters who will be able to speak to kind of the overlay of the self-determination program and how some of those core fundamentals in that program have, alternative services have given us kind of an insight or kind of a roadmap on how some of that might work. So please come and join. You can register at webinar.disabilitythriveinitiative.